The Legend of Zelda is a series that has transcended generations. Breath of the Wild started the open world revolution that we've been in since its release in 2017. Ocarina of Time managed to accomplish what Mario 64 did, except for the action-adventure genre, and the original Legend of Zelda was what introduced most people to the magic of open world game design. My personal story with the Zelda series is quite interesting, I'd say. When I got my N64, one of the first games I was given for it was The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Yes, my first Zelda game is what's often regarded as the most depressing and scary. Honestly, after that, I had little interest in the series until I want to say I was around 12. I got Wind Waker on GameCube around that point, and then I went back and played Ocarina of Time, A Link to the Past. Then, sometime around 2016, I would finally sit down and play The Legend of Zelda, thanks to the Wii U Virtual Console. I can still recall a lot from that first playthrough. There were some things that I liked, some things that I was indifferent to, and some things that just frustrated me beyond belief. At the end of it all, I felt that I didn't enjoy myself as much as I thought I would. I remember my main criticism of the game was how cryptic it was and how I just didn't like how Link controlled. With a new game coming out shortly after this video's release, I figured it would be fitting to go back to the game that started it all and see if with the passage of time as well as myself aging, whether my thoughts and feelings about Zelda 1 have changed for the better or for the worse. First, let's go into the backstory of this game's development. The Legend of Zelda entered development around the same time as Super Mario Bros. And largely shared the same dev team. The team wanted to keep the games as different as possible, so Super Mario Bros. Would focus on linear game design, while The Legend of Zelda would focus on non-linear design. Development was led by Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka. If you watched my Super Mario Bros. Video, then you already know what I think about Miyamoto, but to my understanding, Tezuka had more of a hand in Zelda than he did in Mario, which is pretty neat. Unlike Mario, which was planned to be yet another cartridge game, The Legend of Zelda was intended to be a launch title for the Famicom's upcoming add-on, the Famicom Disk System, and thus was designed to take full advantage of the add-on's new features, most notably a save system. The Famicom Disk System used these floppy diskette-like things to read and write game data. It was really neat for the time and was seen as the future of the Famicom. Hell, patents were filed for a US version of the add-on for the NES. Other features that the game took advantage of was the larger storage capacity of the discs. A standard cartridge at the time could only hold around 32 kilobytes of data, while each side of the diskette could hold 64 kilobytes each for a whopping total of 128 kilobytes, which was impressive until Capcom released a port of Ghosts and Goblins on a 128 kilobyte cartridge, followed by the cost of cartridge components going down. As if to add insult to injuries, Zelda was converted to a cartridge for its release on the NES, with saving being handled by a watch battery. I actually own both the cartridge and disc versions of this game. As someone who knows how the NES operates, it is so weird to play the Famicom version of this game. You have to eject the disc and swap it to the other side at various points, and it just feels wrong. There's another feature of the disc system version that you'll notice as soon as you get to the title screen, that being the music. The disc system adds an additional sound channel, which was mostly used for sound effects, but during moments of no gameplay, this would be used for the music. Here's a quick comparison for you. While we're on the topic of music, let's talk about that really quickly. This game has maybe 4 or 5 tracks as a whole, but what's here is pretty solid. This game gave us the main theme for the Zelda franchise, which plays on the title screen and in the overworld. Even the theme that's used for the dungeons really conveys the labyrinthian nature of them, and fun fact, it was seemingly inspired by the Deep Purple song April. Koji Kondo was responsible for this game's music, and yeah, he pretty much hit 2 home runs back to back with Super Mario Bros. And then this game right after. Let's get back to the behind-the-scenes side of things. The world of Zelda was designed like your typical high fantasy world, with inspirations from Tolkien's Middle-earth, of course, and Miyamoto's childhood experience of exploring the woods behind his house. The main hero of the game was designed after Disney's Peter Pan, with his name being... well, you can actually name the boy whatever you want, but canonically he's known as Link, as he's meant to represent the link between the player and the game. The princess he would be rescuing was named Zelda, which came from the wife of the famous writer, Scott Fitzgerald, Zelda Fitzgerald. There were some other concepts that would ultimately be left on the cutting room floor. Namely, time travel was considered for the game, with the pieces of the Triforce you collect throughout it meant to be computer chips. The technology themes would be scrapped to focus on the fantasy side of things, though. The game was released in February of 1986 in Japan and August of '87 in America, and was a smash hit in both regions. It sold 1 million copies on its first day of release in Japan, which is insane to think that a game could sell that fast in such a short amount of time, especially in the 80s. Eventually it would reach 6.5 million copies worldwide, and became an all-time classic. Zelda 1 definitely has one hell of a legacy, given that it started one of Nintendo's most successful franchises. With the series turning 40 in a few years, a new game releasing soon, and even a live-action movie just on the horizon, let's go back to the past and see what was so breathtaking about this legend. You know, for being a game from 1986, this title screen is actually very impressive. If you wait long enough, you'll actually be shown the story. Yeah, you actually get to see the story without having to consult the game manual. The screen here is actually updated from the original cartridge, which reads something like this. Many years ago, Prince of Darkness Ganon stole one of the Triforce with power. Princess Zelda had one of the Triforce with wisdom. She divided it into 8 units to hide it from Ganon before she was captured. Go find the 8 units, Link, to save her. God, that is awful. You gotta love that early NES translation jank. Allow me to elaborate, as there is a bit more to the story than what's actually said in-game. The Kingdom of Hyrule has fallen into chaos ever since the Demon King Ganon invaded and stole the Triforce of Power, a magical artifact that grants those who possess it great strength. Before he could get his hands on the Triforce of Wisdom, however, the Princess of Hyrule, Zelda, smashed it into 8 pieces and had them hidden in various dungeons throughout the kingdom. Zelda instructed her servant, Impa, to find someone who was courageous enough to seek out the 8 pieces of the Triforce of Wisdom and defeat Ganon just before she was captured. This leads her to encounter Link, who saves her from a horde of monsters. Impa informs the young boy about Zelda's predicament, and he sets off to gather the Triforce of Wisdom and slay Ganon. The future of Hyrule now depends on a 10-year-old boy. Yes, Link is 10 in this game. After naming Link, you'll be plopped into the game world with nothing but the clothes on your back and the hat on your head. You'll probably be drawn to the cave entrance as on the first screen. Inside is an old man who gifts Link a wooden sword. From there, your next objective should be to explore. Now would be the best time to discuss Link's controls, which, if I'm honest, aren't that good. The D-pad will move Link in the cardinal directions, and only the cardinal directions. Link cannot move diagonally, which restricts your movement in a way that I feel is really stiff. Pressing A will cause Link to thrust his sword forward, which brings me to my second issue with the controls, that goddamn sword thrust. It has such a limited range, meaning Link will only stab enemies that are directly in front of him. Combine that with the movement limitations, and I think you can see why I don't like the way Link controls in this game. Am I spoiled by later games in the series that fix these issues? Yeah, maybe. The B button will use the secondary item Link has equipped, to which there are a variety of. We'll go over those as we get them, but for now, I'll let you know that the way to swap secondary items is the inventory menu, which you pull up by pressing start. From here, you want to explore Hyrule before entering the first dungeon, although nothing is stopping you from heading straight there and tackling it right now. Really, there isn't much stopping you from even tackling dungeons out of order, aside from needing a specific item to uncover the entrances to later dungeons. This is where the open-ended nature of Zelda 1 really shines. Hell, you can even play through a majority of the game without getting a sword. It's really impressive to see this kind of design philosophy from a game this old. As someone who plays her fair share of open-world games today, such as The Elder Scrolls, it's fun to see where a lot of these ideas partially came from. There is just one slight little problem I have here, and if you've played Zelda 1 before, you might know what I'm about to say. This game is cryptic with its design. Listen, I am all cool with hidden passageways and secrets in games, but usually there are some sort of hints, either by a character or the level design itself, to tip you off. Zelda 1 doesn't believe in hints, though. Like, yeah, there are NPCs who tell you stuff, but I feel it's too limited due to being an early NES game. There are these burnable bushes and bombable walls hidden throughout Hyrule, but aside from maybe 1 or 2 cases, there is nothing that hints at which wall to bomb or which bush to burn. Now, when you do find one, it can be something good like these guys who award you rupees for finding them, or give you a free red potion or heart container, the former of which acts as 2 full heals, and the latter is a permanent upgrade to Link's health, or it can be these assholes who make you pay for the door repairs. Like, motherfucker, your door is a plant! Honestly, I feel like the existence of the door repair assholes feels like the game is discouraging you from exploring on your own. Top that off with the gray block of a map you have, and I feel it necessary for me to use a guide to enjoy this game. There's this video by John Strife Plays where he's talking about the first Kingsfield game, and he brings up a really good point about using guides for games like these. Exploring in games is great, while being lost and frustrated is not. Now, I'm all for difficulty in gameplay, but when the level layout makes finding the gameplay itself a chore, I think we can collectively agree that having a map is a fair thing. I would say, try playing this game without a guide first if you feel like it, but if you start feeling frustrated by the design, then there is no shame in using a guide if it means you can actually enjoy and appreciate the game. It's thanks to the guide put together by the lovely folks at ZeldaDungeon.net that I was able to get 3 additional heart containers, the blue candle, the blue ring, and the first sword upgrade all before entering the first dungeon. The blue candle lets Link shoot out a flame in front of him to burn bushes, but you can only use it once per screen, so if you want to use it again, you have to leave the current screen and then go back to it in order to use it again. The blue ring upgrades Link's defenses and also turns his outfit white. From here, you can go into the first dungeon, the Eagle. Yes, all the dungeons have names based on the layout shape. The dungeons in this game are somewhat straightforward, fortunately. Finding the compass in each dungeon will show you the location of the Triforce piece, while the map will show you the full layout of the dungeon, save for some hidden rooms that are intentionally hidden from you. Some rooms also have locked doors which require keys to open, so use those wisely. It's here in Dungeon 1 that Link can pick up the boomerang, or as I like to call it, the croissant. Fuck, I'm not keeping that in. The boomerang rocks early game because it stuns most early game enemies, allowing you to more easily take care of them. Anyway, beat the boss at the end of the dungeon and grab the Triforce piece. It's from here that you can— son of a bitch! Yeah, I think we can call that a certified Zelda 1 moment. Dungeon 2 is where you start seeing more aggressive enemies, such as these snake-like ropes that charge at Link. You can also pick up the blue boomerang here, which has a longer range than the standard boomerang. The boss of this dungeon is the Dodongo, which isn't harmed by your sword. No, you have to get it to walk into your bomb before it explodes to damage it, and the only hint in the game that tells you this is Dodongo dislikes smoke. Now, things might have been all fine and dandy up until now, but my woes with this game truly begin to shine, starting in Dungeon 3, the Manji. You see these night enemies? These are Dark Nuts. I hate Dark Nuts. They are my second least favorite enemy in the game, as they can only be hit from the side or the back, and they always seem to turn to face you at the most inconvenient of times. Anyways, it's here in this dungeon that Link can pick up the raft, allowing Link to cross sections of water, and I don't know if I should censor that or not. The boss in this dungeon is annoying to deal with, but I love his name, Manhandler. It's just really fun to say. Unfortunately, I died here, so now would be a good time to talk about dying. When Link dies, you'll be presented with this screen where you can either continue, save, or quit. Continue puts Link where you started the game with only 3 hearts of health, so if you want to have more, you'll need to go grind enemies to fully refill your health. Saving just saves the game and then continues it. Quitting will put you back at the title screen. Dying in dungeons will actually place you at the beginning of the dungeon you died in, so you won't have to walk all the way back, fortunately. With the raft in hand, you can use it at these docks to sail across bodies of water. Doing it here will net you another heart container, and using it here at this lake will bring you to the entrance of Dungeon 4. Although to go back a bit, if you took the same path I did getting that heart container, you might have noticed this one that's just out of reach, and hey, what do you know, there's some good game design in here after all. Dungeon 4 has some notable stuff about it. This is the first dungeon where you'll have a dark room which requires using the candle to light up. You'll also encounter this room with bubbles and like-likes. Bubbles don't cause direct damage, but do curse Link so that he can't use his sword for a few seconds, while like-likes will grab a hold of Link, and if you got the magic shield which blocks magical attacks, they'll consume it, making you need to go buy another one. You also get the step ladder, which allows you to cross these one-tile gaps, and hey, that means we can go grab that heart container we saw earlier. This dungeon's also home to what's probably the most straightforward hint in the game. Anyway, just cheese the boss and move on. Assuming you've been following the same guide that I have, you can actually get a lot more stuff now before entering the next dungeon. First, let's grab this really quick, pick up the power bracelet that's just chilling underneath this random statue, and nab the final sword upgrade. Oh, here's a good example of this game's cryptic nature. Both old men who guard the upgraded swords tell you that you must master it first. What exactly does it mean to master it? Well, clearly it means you need to have a certain number of heart containers before we'll give you these, and if you don't have the correct amount of heart containers, then you can't get these at this current moment, so you can piss off and come back later. Oh, it doesn't mean that? Then what the fuck does it mean? Anyway, the entrance to Dungeon 5 is at the top of this looping screen, which after like 4 loops will appear. It's here you'll find Pole's voice, which are these annoying to deal with enemies in the NES version. But in the Famicom version, you could shout into the microphone that's on the Player 2 controller to insta-kill them. This is a really neat feature that's actually hinted at in the US manual, but ultimately can't be used in our version of the game. You know, this dungeon is meant to look like a lizard, but honestly it looks like a side profile of Kermit the Frog to me. Dungeon 5 is pretty challenging, and it's all thanks to the blue Dark Nuts, who are faster and take more hits to kill. You know that cardinal sin of JRPGs? You know, late-game enemies being recolors of early-game enemies that hit harder and have more health? Well, yeah, guess what Zelda 1 does. If you've gotten this far, you've absolutely noticed it already, but fuck me, I feel like now was the best time to mention it, because I hate Dark Nuts, and the blue ones are even worse to deal with. You can grab the Warp Whistle here, which acts as this game's fast travel system. It'll take you to random dungeon entrances with each use, and before you ask, no, you can't use it to kill the Pole's voices. You do have to use it to kill the boss of the dungeon, which fortunately an old man hidden in the dungeon does tell you. Also, the noise that plays when your health restores from collecting the Triforce piece is starting to hurt my ears now. After stopping by a potion seller as I require the strongest health potions, I entered Dungeon 6 and... Woohoo! Fucking Wizrobes! Dark Nuts suck, right? But at least they only have a melee attack. Wizrobes shoot out this magic attack that hurts so badly, and the red ones like to teleport around, and so do the blue ones, but they do it less frequently, and oh cool, Wizrobes, likes, and bubbles in the same room. Well, that's just great. You can nab the magic rod here, which I thought would be a great way to deal with the Wizrobes, but no, they resist its attack. Like, what's the point of having all these cool alternative weapons if I can only use them on enemies that haven't been an issue for me since Dungeon 3? Yeah, just kill the boss that dies in one hit and get out of here. Now before you enter the next dungeon, purchase the meat. You see, within Dungeon 7, there's this guy who says grumble grumble. He blocks the path forward in the dungeon unless you give him the meat. I could see how his message could indicate to give him the meat, but still kinda cryptic. What is it with Dungeon 7, though? I'm seeing enemies that I haven't seen since Dungeon 2 or 3, and it's about as difficult as those ones. This is literally marked level 7, yet it's easier than the previous 4 dungeons, and whoa, Lag City, baby! Woohoo! Anyway, you can grab the red candle here, which gives you 2 candle uses per screen, which isn't much of an upgrade, but hey, I'll take it. You even rematched the first dungeon boss here? This had to have been Dungeon 3 at some point, right? Next up is Dungeon 8, which has the only obvious burnable bush in the game hiding its entrance. I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it, this dungeon fucking blows. You fight 3 manhandler here, and you have to deal with all these rooms full of some of the most annoying to deal with enemies in the game. You can pick up the actual Bible here, and yes, that's what it's called in the Japanese version, and the magic key, which acts as an infinite use key. After clearing Dungeon 8 and assembling the full Triforce of Wisdom, it's time to enter Death Mountain via the left boob rock and take the fight to Ganon. Death Mountain is enormous and a labyrinth within itself to where I feel the in-game map just doesn't cut it here. This place is filled with Wizrobes, which makes sense because they are hands down the most obnoxious enemy in the game, and other annoying enemies to truly test you. It's here you can pick up the red ring, which further increases Link's defenses, and the silver arrow. You want to pick up the silver arrow, for you see, if you don't have the bow and the silver arrow, you can't land the final hit on Ganon. Why is the key to beat the game hidden away like an optional dungeon item? The final fight against Ganon might seem hard at first, but all you need to do is just pick a corner of the room and start stabbing as he teleports around while invisible. Once you've stabbed Ganon enough times, he'll enter this red state where you can finally then shoot him with the silver arrow, turning him into a pile of ash. Pick up his Triforce of Power and proceed to the next room, where you then rescue Princess Zelda. After the credits, you'll be presented with this game's second quest. You can access this by entering your name as Zelda when making a new file. Second quest is more difficult with remixed dungeons, and even new caves that can take your heart containers if you don't have enough rupees. Yeah, no thanks. I'm good. Congratulations, you've beaten Zelda 1. How do you feel? Now that's great and all, viewer, who I can totally hear right now, but I don't want to play this game again for another decade. Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't think this game has aged very well. The controls, the map design, the annoying enemies that are so difficult to deal with because of your limited movement, it just makes this game hard for someone like me to go back and enjoy. Like I alluded to earlier, I think I've just been spoiled by future games in the series that fix a lot of the problems that I have with this one. What might have seemed breathtaking back in 1986 just feels obsolete and outdated now. But then again, if it wasn't for this game, we wouldn't have had games like Breath of the Wild or A Link to the Past. I suppose that counts for something, and hey, if you find this game enjoyable, then more power to you. I'm glad you were able to enjoy it, despite me not being able to. This is going to be the last of my first upload video, so please allow me to do my first ever please subscribe bit if you want to see more from me. With all of that said, I hope you have a great day, or night. Peace.